Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. You all know I love sharing my secrets of how I went from $17,000 a year to a multimillionaire. My top essential tool for managing my two successful businesses, plus my crazy life, is my paper planner. But not any random planner, specifically my Inner Guide yearly planner. The Inner Guide planner doesn't just organize my schedule, it helps me map out and discover my goals, dreams, self-care, and keeps my millionaire mindset on track. I want you all to get planning right away for 2019. So I arranged to get a special Inner Guide discount exclusive to my ProjectME posse. Go pick out your favorite yearly planner at inner-guide.com. And at checkout, use the code ProjectME 15% off, and you will receive 15% off your entire order. If you are driving or multitasking and can't write this down, the Inner Guide link and code is in my Instagram bio at ProjectME with Tiffany. And remember, as I always say, you are either planning for success or heading to failure. You are listening to the podcast ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. You guys, this is a special treat for you today. First off, it's so cool how I met this amazing woman, but I've brought on a clinical psychologist for all of you. And who doesn't need one? Like, personally, I have one on speed dial. But most importantly, I want you guys to hear about how she helps type A women. And I know there are a lot of you who listen who have achieved a lot in your life, are high achievers, go-getters, you're driven, you drive hard, but you still feel like something's missing. So you've got to hear what she has to say. Also, she's the host of a new top-ranking self-help podcast called Love Your Truth. What a cool title. So welcome, Jenn Chrisman. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm great.
So excited to have you on. Should we call you doctor? I kind of want to. Is that okay?
You can. And I actually spent a lot of money earning that title. But whenever my clients come in and they want to call me doctor, I always tell them to just call me Jenn.
It's just so fun for me.
Well, then you can call me doctor.
Okay, thank you. First off, you guys, I want you to know how we met because it's just cool how the universe works and supports all of us. And I want you guys to always hear examples of this. I spoke at an event of a mutual friend of ours at Mommy Millionaire, and she happened to be, Dr. Jenn happened to be speaking that day, the same day I was. I was evacuated from the fires. I wasn't even supposed to be able to be there. And we had this other speaker is a friend of ours who did an incredible meditation, and I held hands with Tracy O'Malley and Dr. Jenn, and I was crying. And we had this whole experience, and I've never met either of them before, didn't follow either of them on Instagram, and we had this moment. And it's just so cool how you meet who you're supposed to meet in life and to just go with it and trust it. So I had to start with that.
Yes, I know. I love those stories too. And actually, I'm just going to clarify because we didn't speak on the same day. I spoke on the first day. I was the opening speaker. Oh. And so you weren't even there for me when I did my speech. And, but we had that meditation, and I came in the second day to watch what was going on and to see who was there. And it was that, it was just the three of us in that little circle holding hands as Nicole led us through that meditation. I think we were all sitting there crying. And it was in the conversations afterwards that you and I realized that there was that kindred spirit between us.
Totally. Yeah. So that makes it even weirder. I didn't even hear you speak, but I felt like I did because I feel like I know you. It's so weird. It's just cool, you guys, to just trust that and trust that life, universe, God, whatever the hell it is you believe in, is actually supporting you, even if you're going through a shitty time or you're having a great time. It just does.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do now that is different from what you've made your career all about before? Like, you've made a serious transition. So help us understand what that is.
Yeah. So in order to kind of share that transition, to really understand it, I have to go back a little bit further. I kind of fell into becoming a psychologist, and complete full disclosure. I didn't think I was actually going to be a psychologist. I went to undergrad. I went to UCLA and I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And when I finished at UCLA, I was like, I am never taking another psych class again. And I thought I was going to be a teacher. But part of my story, part of my journey is actually creating a new financial experience for myself. I grew up pretty poor and almost in poverty. And so I knew that I wanted to make more money, and being a teacher wasn't really going to allow that for me to happen. So I ended up, the circumstances being what they were, I ended up getting into the field of psychology. I went to get a master's degree to become a marriage and family therapist. I was a little young and quite egotistical at the time. And so I very quickly decided that a master's wasn't enough and I needed to go get that doctorate. And I went into, it just sort of happened. It just, chances being what they were, I went into becoming a psychologist, and I went into private practice because, again, I knew that I wanted to do something where I was going to impact people's lives in a positive way, but I also knew that I needed to make money. And those two blended really well for me. And I graduated, I went into private practice, I built a successful practice, but there was something always missing for me. And in hindsight, looking back at it now, I know what was always missing for me was my heart, my soul, therapy, traditional therapy, the way I was trained, very contemporary psychology. We're really taught to kind of keep ourselves at the door, and you have to be a blank slate, and you come in, you have to be very quote unquote objective. And there was always something about that didn't feel great for me, because I felt like I wasn't able to fully step into myself. And I always had to hide. And there was almost this part that was encouraging me to play small. And so I built this successful practice. I had grown as much as I could grow my business, but I knew I wasn't finished growing. And so when I became pregnant with my second child, I knew that I had hit that glass ceiling, and I wasn't ready. I couldn't grow my practice any more than it could. But again, I wasn't done myself. And that led me to pivot slightly into working more with other therapists and actually helping them to build their businesses. And I had started off by bringing interns into my practice, and that was where I realized that I was really good at the business and marketing stuff. And I really liked mentoring. I believed in the power of success and building a successful practice, but it wasn't always something that was taught. And so I loved working with these therapists, and I loved helping them to believe in themselves. But what I didn't like about having interns in my practice was I didn't like being on the hook for whether or not they did anything with the information I was teaching them. Again, all of these growing pains led me to starting an online business where I actually did coaching and business and marketing tools for therapists. And I thought that was my true calling. The last few years, I thought, like, gosh, I found it. This is what I meant to do. But I kept coming up against these roadblocks. I kept coming up against this. It was an internal struggle. This part of me that wasn't willing to fully step forward. I believed in it. I believed in what I was doing. I knew I'm good. at this. Like I definitely have something that not all therapists have is in terms of understanding business and marketing, but I wasn't actually like, I wasn't wanting to play. And I had to look at that. And what I came to understand was, again, I was hiding a part of myself. I wasn't fully allowing myself to step into my business. And, part of that was with the audience that I was speaking to. And, I think that traditionally therapists and, there's always the outliers, but as a whole, the field of psychology is very narcissistic. It's very intellectual, and there's a lot of judgment. It's not a very open-minded field. There's a lot of people that are trying to take healing and personal development and human experience and put it into this neat little box that fits into a Western medical model. And I just didn't subscribe to that. And so I'm trying to I'm trying to teach, and I'm trying to inspire to a field where, again, the outliers are always there and my people are there in that field. But as a whole, my heart wasn't in alignment with it. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching. I had to do some more reflecting, and what that has turned into is really kind of, refocusing and shifting back into more of the one-on-one work, but a different caliber, not so much in the traditional therapeutic model, but more in coaching, working with those high-performing women to do the healing that actually needs to happen in order to break through to the next level.
Wow. I mean, to go from having a successful practice and, success, I'm assuming also equals you were, bringing in a nice chunk of change, but yet you didn't feel fully fulfilled. How did that look like mindset wise for you to transition? Did you transition into one-on-one working with type A type women? Or did you slowly transition, or were you like, F it, I'm going for it? How did you do this? Because that can be as scary, if not more, than leaving a corporate job to start your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been, it's something that I'm still continuing to transition through. Part of it being, I never fully abandoned my practice. I have those clients that the work is still there. And so it's been challenging with that, how do I fully navigate it? But, a lot of it is trusting, taking that mindset, right, of trusting that I can take that leap and the wings will appear. Because to be, there's so many limitations with a traditional therapeutic model as far as what I'm allowed to believe I'm worth and how much I can charge. And I kept coming up against this, I'm ready to charge more. I'm ready to value myself at a higher level. And yet, people I'm getting a lot of funny looks coming my way saying, as a therapist, you're charging that much. And, having to, the mindset work is really holding on to and believing that I am worth making this transition. And, kind of also going back to just when I came into the realization and really honoring that my practice in the traditional model of therapy wasn't fulfilling me, what that looked like was me scaling back. And that's scary because when you're full time in private practice charging your full fee, that's really good money. But to be able, at what cost? Right? If my soul is not feeling fulfilled, I'm seeing 12 clients a day, back to back to back to back. And the money is good, but my happiness is, I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm not feeling And it became, it got to that point where I was like, I would rather take that pay cut and make this transition and be able to have that space to do what feels good for my soul.
I teach this all the time, whether it's one-on-ones, when I speak, when I do customized coaching, as much as I can, I share this. In order for us to propel forward and soar forward with what we're meant to do, that might be leaving a corporate job. That might be starting a whole new company. I started a second company, which was ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. That might be doing a full pivot in your business, like what you're doing. You end up going backwards, what it looks like on paper financially, in order to spring forward. Last time I checked, there is no major company out there that you could show me that didn't acquire a shit ton of debt to then spring forward.
Yeah.
But that's good debt. That's a good investment. That's a good reason to go backwards. You're not going backwards because you just filled your closet with Chanel and Louboutins.
Right.
You are doing it for a purpose. You're regrouping and rebranding with a purpose of your own fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And it's like I've had to, the things that I've done, which are really sort of challenging, asking me to take that step back and just trusting in this process. Just last week, I finally canceled my Psychology Today profile, which is a really big stuff. Honestly, like I don't get any referrals from Psychology Today. My practice is at the point where it's all word of mouth at this point. But energetically letting that go, energetically saying, okay, I'm no longer participating in this model, and knowing that there are going to be, again, some looks and, what do you mean you're not on Psychology Today? And the next step for me, and what I'm really coming up against internally, and like the big risk that I'm preparing myself for, is in March when my licensure is up for renewal. And again, my soul, I'm getting the download that my soul is telling me not to renew.
Holy shit.
To really let go of the security blanket of being a licensed psychologist and really just stepping into full-time coach. Because, with the licensed psychologist, people want to participate in a Western medical model. People want to use insurance. And as a licensed psychologist, even though I don't work with insurance companies, I don't take insurance, I don't bill insurance, I won't let insurance tell me how much I deserve to charge or how much I'm worth, but people can still get a super bill and they can still get reimbursement on their own. And so for me to let go of my license, I will potentially, right, the fear, the negative self-talk, the voice of fear sounds like, well, you're going to lose those clients who want to use their insurance. And it's about trusting that those aren't my clients. Those aren't my people. And really allowing myself to fully let that go. It's been my identity for more than 10 years now.
That is scary as shit. There's 1,000 things that can go into. It's ego is attached to it. It's a title. It is, will I lose clients? Now where's my credibility? Because I'm a doctor. Like there is credibility there. I mean, there is truth in all of that too. But like you said, you have a great point that there also, as much as there's a credibility, there's also a hindrance. Because when I see, and I'm someone who loves therapy of all kinds and personal development, like I love like Eastern, Western, and all the in between. But when I do see someone who is like a clinical psychologist, when I see that, I do think traditional therapy, for listeners who are in the United States, like you go through insurance, so meaning it's not as expensive. Maybe you have a $50 copay or a $25 copay. That is how I think, and I'm very open-minded.
Right. And yet my guess is, as a coach, how much are you willing to pay a coach? How much are you
My coach that I have that I've had for years, people are going to shit when they hear this, but I don't really care. I pay him $10,000 a quarter.
Yep. Exactly. And that's how much coaches charge.
I mean, for someone who's top tier, and that makes sense, to do that. But yeah, I would want you, someone like you, doing the work and how the complexity and the intensity and the time of the work you'd be doing with especially type A type women in order to peel away a lot of their shit. That's going to take a lot of work and energy and skill.
Yeah.
So what do you see when what made you, I'll rephrase this. What made you want to work with this very challenging personality type?
I don't actually see it as that challenging of a personality type because it's not so much again, I want to clarify because I don't necessarily think it's type A.
Oh, okay.
So much as it is the high achiever. Because I will put myself in that category and describe myself. I am definitely a high achiever. I am not a type A personality. I am controlling and a perfectionist, but I'm not a type A. And in fact, it took me a long time to even embrace the fact that I was a perfectionist because I'm not type A. My perfectionism always showed up as procrastination. But I always think too that we teach what it is that we need to learn. And I also believe in transforming our mess into our message. And everything that I've done in my life has always been in service of understanding, right? Trying to understand my own personal experiences, trying to understand what was going on for the people around me that were doing the things that they were doing, like trying to, without really knowing at the time, trying to understand why everything happens what is the reason for why everything happens. I didn't have a strong belief system when I was growing up. However, there was always a part of my soul that knew there's a reason why I'm going through what I'm going through. And so, that is what has led me. I believe that, there's a reason why we experience what we do. There's a reason why we go through what we do. And we each have an obligation and a responsibility to transform those experiences so that we can turn around and reach our hand out to someone else who may be a step or two behind us.
I love that. It's so true. And I want to make sure that we get everyone on the same page here because there is a lot of confusion around what is a type A personality. So can you just briefly help us understand so you're saying you can be a high achiever, controlling perfectionist, but that doesn't mean you're a type A. Yeah. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So type A, type A is really, when we think about it in the traditional context of it, we're talking about the external manifestation of a type A personality. So it is, I think about it in terms of I'm laughing at the example I'm about to give because it's so relevant to you. I think about it in terms of the planners and
oh Lord.
Right? You can see the planner with the different colored highlights and the organization and everything is meticulous, right? Type A is often associated with a meticulous external presentation. Everything gets put into its box. It's very compartmentalized for structure and ultimately safety. Whereas like I said, I'm a perfectionist and I'm very controlling. I'm not so compartmentalized and I'm definitely not so organized. I'm really scattered. I'm kind of a hot mess most of the time in terms of my external surroundings. Internally, And my internal world is very uptight and very rigid. It just doesn't necessarily manifest externally.
Interesting. I really appreciate that explanation. And as I'm like glancing over at my planner, thank you.
Uh-huh. And it's so funny because like personally, it's one of those things, like I have dreams about a color coordinated, highlighted planner and like being able, like I've always wanted to be that person who has that level of commitment. It's just never been in my personality. It's just not my type as much as I want it to be. But I know that that's also just me like grasping for the next level of control.
Yeah. And listen, I used to always, up until a couple of years ago, I used to always dream of being an extrovert. And I'd finally accepted that I'm not. I'm an introvert that's highly socialized, and it is what it is. I still sometimes, get envious or am amazed at extroverts, like really never seeming to need like this downtime or anything. And it's like, God, they look like they're having so much more fun, but I am what I am. And we all are who we are, right?
Yep. I'm the same way. I've come so far in my extroverted tendencies, but my heart, my core is still so much an introvert. And I most certainly have to, take that down time to really just be by myself.
Do you have to answer your door? Someone's knocking at her door.
Someone was knocking at my door. No, it was looked like it was a delivery guy. They dropped it. They dropped it.
Your Amazon Prime package 6.
Exactly. I mean, who even knows what that was?
Exactly. Like we were surprised when I came back from my trip. And my fiance's like, "Oh, there's no packages at the door." And he's like, "You didn't order anything." I'm like, "I may have a problem." Like I ordered like the second color set of the velvet scrunchies. I have an issue. So when you're doing this transition in your practice, obviously you've built that skill level through all of your work as a clinical psychologist. It's more so refocusing on who your target audience is, and how deep you go into your sessions and the work that you do. How have you had to, business-wise, revamp your marketing plan and everything like that? Like, what does that look like? Has it been a lot of work? Is it ongoing?
Yeah, honestly, it is a lot of work for me, because it's actually requiring me to do something that I have, for the last 6 or 7 years, I'd say I really haven't had to do anything in the way of marketing, because I'm in Hermosa Beach, which is this, super cute little beach town suburb of Los Angeles. And, there are a lot of pros and cons that come, mostly pros for me, of living and working in the same town. And so I developed a reputation early on, which sort of built my practice for me. And this, truth be told, has been kind of a theme for me for most of my life, of just kind of running on pure natural talent and ability without having to really apply myself. Again, it's that perfectionist. And as I am making this pivot, as I've made this pivot, it is asking me to step more into myself, to become more than just my natural talent, to really, kind of excel beyond that. I'm thinking of Gay Hendricks and The Big Leap. Right. That like my natural talent, my natural ability, has gotten me so much, but it's sort of that upper limit problem, like that it can only go so far. But I know that there's so much more there. And that's really what this next chapter is for me. It's kind of, catapulting into that next dimension, which is asking me to put myself out there, which is asking me to show up for marketing, which is asking me to actually adopt a marketing plan. I really never had to do that. But building beyond just the small town practice is, building globally. People need to know who you are. And that's been a real, total 180 for me. Again, something that like I know I'm so good at understanding. I can create the marketing plan. And then it's just about the implementation and working through the discomfort, that introverted nature of mine that, I like to be by myself on both social media and real life. And so really having to put myself out there in a more consistent manner is a totally different approach for me.
Yeah, and you're probably, I'm guessing here, were you that chick in school that like didn't have to study that hard but got the A's that I hated?
I will tell you, okay, so I was that person until probably high school when I actually had to start applying myself. And then I never applied myself because I just didn't. And I managed to I don't even know how I graduated. Like I managed to graduate high school. I went to UCLA, and I made it through all of grad school without ever buying a textbook.
Okay, that's annoying.
But I wasn't a straight A student. I was really good with essays because I was good with my words. And it wasn't until I had to take my licensing exam. That was the very first time in my life where I actually had to stop and apply myself. And the first time in my life where I ever had to study. And I spent months, and it was a terrifying experience for me because I was really coming up against like, oh my gosh, like this is like, I'm putting everything that I have into this and I might not pass.
That's exactly what comes up is if you don't put that much effort, it's like people who have just like natural, amazing physiques. And I mean, and then, maybe they get older and then they actually have to start being mindful about what they eat, and they actually have to exercise. There's a whole emotional component that comes up because you're more invested the more effort you put into something, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
Now you're having to put in more effort than you ever have in your entire life into your business and in turn your financial well-being. So therefore you are super vested at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, that piece of being a perfectionist, right? That's what this is, it's really easy to write something off if it doesn't work out when you didn't try. But when you try and you put yourself in, and that perfectionist, that fear that says, what if it doesn't work out? That is terrifying. But that's really what, the pivot has been, is challenging the perfectionist and allowing myself to really invest everything into, showing up fully and knowing that there's a lot on the line now.
How do you get through those days or weeks where you feel like you have, an 800-pound brick on your back because it's a monkey you have on your back you've actually never had before? So what do you say to yourself? I mean, most people think, oh, well, she's a, clinical psychologist. Like she must have all the mindset tools in the book and, very little rattles her. What is it that you do in order to keep yourself grounded from like being whisked away by your fear?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think, for me, it's really becoming less about, how do I want to say this? One of the biggest hurdles I've had to overcome is, my, the knowing, and the amount of information that I have, just again, being a seeker and also then going through this process. And it's been what I came to, that especially this last year, which has been one of the most transformational years of my life, is that for so long, I understood what was going on. I saw it. I, conceptually could make sense of why I was doing what I was doing, or I could see that, okay, this is the fear showing up. And I relied too much on that knowing and that understanding. But here's the thing that's really important to understand, is that insight doesn't bring about change. And so, knowing something isn't enough. And I relied for so long on just knowing. And the last year for me, and, the real, turning point has been allowing myself to move into actually, the action that follows with the knowing. And so for me, the action around the healing and like, what do I do when the fear kicks in? It's been a lot of self-care. It's been a lot of taking time, like actually carving out time, not just to be by myself and distract, which is really easy, but to actually like be by myself and be with myself. And that's something that I personally, I need the most. I need to just like, especially right now, I have my Christmas tree up and like just sitting on my couch with the tree lit and a cup of tea and not saying anything to anyone, not having podcast in my ears, not having the TV on, maybe having a book next to me, but not necessarily reading it, and just getting into stillness has been one of those self-care practices that is most transformative for me. The other thing too has been allowing myself to tap into a more spiritual practice. And, again, not relying so much on my own personal knowing, but really letting myself move into more of a faith and a belief and, trusting in something bigger than myself, trusting in a path and trusting in a process, like really believing that it's all happening exactly as it should. And those are not things that ever come to you from an intellectual knowing. It doesn't happen in your head. It happens in your heart. And, it's one of the hardest things to communicate to another person is having that shift in your belief system.
Yeah, because if we are stuck in like self-will and our intellect, you can get trapped in that and it can feel very isolating and alone. And then we think that, but whether we do something, we don't do something, we make the right decision or whatever, it's all on us. But when you tap into and you surrender and you realize there's something greater than ourselves, well, then it's not so much pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been one of the hardest parts of my journey is allowing myself to really tap into, like, always having that knowing. My soul always felt it, but I was really resistant to it for a very long time.
Well, I'm thrilled that you have made the decision to take that big leap, which is, by the way, my favorite book. So it's funny you mentioned that. I give it to all my clients. But
same. It's so good.
So good, you guys. So that you took that, you've done it, you're doing it, you're sitting in the dirty diaper, as I call it. It's the dirty diaper period of in between. It's really uncomfortable, but you're also sharing about it, which I know you guys, like for those of you who are listening, take a screenshot and tag Dr. Jenn Chrisman and tag myself at ProjectME Tiffany so that we know that you guys heard the episode and you liked it. We definitely want to see that because it does help, because sitting in this sticky, uncomfortable spot is not fun, but it's part of the process. You don't get to have where you want to go without sitting in the dirty diaper. It's just not possible.
Yeah. And I think also, it's so nice to know that you're not alone in something. And I think oftentimes we look, to the influencers, or even, I love that we're shifting more into the expanders, not so much the influencers, but we look to those people. And it's really easy, I think, to get discouraged because they've already gotten it. And if you're sitting in that dirty diaper, it's hard to imagine that you're ever going to be there, to get to that level. And so to find those people, I'm a big believer in the path, right? We're all taking this journey. We're all on the road. And, some of us are just a few steps ahead of the others. And so, it's about finding those people, not necessarily that are, 2 or 3 miles ahead of you, but the ones that are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, because that's where I think, we get the most from it, because we can, you get the inspiration, you get to see them doing it, but you also get to feel the connection and the, that sense that like you are not alone in this.
Thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability. This is exactly why I wanted you on as a guest. I love having guests on from all different stages, like you said, of going after their dreams and what they're meant to do, because it looks different at different stages and we all can relate at different stages. And you're doing a major pivot and it's scary as shit.
Yes.
Where can people reach out to who like want to connect, want to feel like less alone, or know they're really meant to do something else, but they're scared as hell because they've created like, such success and stability and safety and maybe what they're already doing? What's the best way?
Yeah. So definitely on Instagram, like please reach out, follow me, send me a DM. I definitely am on Instagram the most and checking it the most. It's easiest for me. I love connecting authentically and honestly. And if you reach out to me, I will get back to you. And email is not so good for me, but Instagram and DMs for sure. And also listen to the podcast, because I don't know, sometimes we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but the oversharing and, maybe it's an occupational hazard, but I love and I value vulnerability so much. And it's definitely, I think, one of my superpowers is my willingness to share. I think I do a really nice job, if I'm going to just give myself credit really quickly, of both holding my strength and knowing that so much of my strength and my power comes in my imperfection. And my willingness to say, I know a lot and I'm good at a lot of things and I don't have all of the answers. And, here's what I'm learning along the way. And so come along with me on that journey, because I have some, incredible people like Tiffany, also coming along and being vulnerable and sharing their truths. And I think it's just a great place for, if you're struggling and you're not sure, how do you tap into your inner calling? How do you make that big transition? Come listen to the conversations of people who are doing it.
And her podcast, you guys, is Love Your Truth. It's in the self-help section, but I'll have all the links in the show notes. And then also you can just head over to ProjectME with Tiffany, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And I'll make sure that that's also repeated in there. And we'll do, swipe up and stories so that you guys can go and tap into her show and tap into your truth. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I just adore you so much and I love everything that you're doing. So thank you.
The feeling's very mutual. Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.